Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to today's Monday, October the 19th, and we welcome you to the UTA Audit Committee meeting. In addition to my two colleagues, we also welcome Mayor Walker and Karen Cronin, who are Chair and Vice Chair of the Advisory Council and also members of this committee. We'll turn to Jana Osler that will read a determination for our electronic meeting today. Good afternoon, Jana.
Thank you, Chair. This is the electronic board meeting determination for holding this meeting electronically. Consistent with provisions of the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act, specifically Utah Code 52-4-207, Section 4, and acting in my capacity as the chair of the Board of Trustees of the Utah Transit Authority, I hereby make the following written determinations in support of my decision to hold and convene electronic meetings of the UTA Board without a physical anchor location. 1, conducting board and board committee meetings with an anchor location that is physically accessible for members of the public to attend in person presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. 2, this determination is based upon the following facts, among others. A, the COVID-19 pandemic is ongoing and significant and continued community person-to-person transmission of the SARS coronavirus continues to occur in the state of Utah, and federal, state, and local health authorities have adopted guidelines for the general public and businesses which encourage institutions and individuals to take precautions, including limiting in-person interactions and recommending increased virtual interactions. This written determination takes place, and I apologize, I just realized that we have an old determination in our packet, so this date is not correct. And I don't remember what the new date is, but we do have a current determination that is in force right now that expires on November 6th, I believe. But this determination is signed by Carlton Christensen, chair of our board, and it is in effect until November 6th of this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Jana. And we maybe double check that date before we get to the end of the meeting. If it's different, we'll just clarify. So that's great. Why don't we begin with our Safety First Minute, and with that, we'll turn to Sheldon Shaw. Good afternoon, Sheldon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. Appreciate the opportunity as always. The safety message that went out on Friday was about crime prevention. And that's because October is Crime Prevention Month. A few of the ideas that were expressed were making friends with your neighbors so you can help each other out. You need to keep your yard and your home in good repair. Makes it less of an opportunity to become a crime. You need to make sure that you don't look like you're out of town when you are out of town. So things like keeping newspapers off of your driveway and getting your garbage can in the backyard is something you can do to help out. Always need to keep your windows and your blinds closed at nighttime. And a big thing you can do to improve safety in your home and on your street is to improve the lighting in both places. And finally, if you have the wherewithal, install a security system. Appreciate the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you, Sheldon. Some great advice for us. With that, I'll turn to our next item up is our consent agenda, which is approval of our minutes from August the 24th. I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair, this is Troy Walker. Motion to approve.
A motion from Troy. Do I second?
Second.
A motion from Mayor Walker, seconded by Beth Holbrook. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next item up is a discussion in regards to our external financial auditor and the recommendation. And with that, we'll turn to our controller, Troy Bingham. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Chair. This is to recommend to our governing board the external audit of Crow LLP. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that for the last 5 years, we've been with Keddington and Christensen. Their contract ended in August of this year, and we went out for RFP for a new audit firm for the next 5 years. And we had 5 proposals that were generated. 2 of them were out of state, 3 of them were internal to the state of Utah. And the evaluation committee chose Crow with the highest score. And Crow has a lot of familiarity with transit agencies throughout the United States. And we felt that they'd be a good fit to Utah Transit Agency's annual audit. So they do the annual audit, our annual pension audit, our annual NTD audit, and every once in a while they do what we call a JIT audit, which is our joint insurance trust. They'll actually once every 3 years go through and look at that. So with those 4 items, we recommend that we move forward with a 3-year with 2 additional 1-year contract extensions to the Board of Trustees for a total of $474,000. And then I'll turn it over for any questions, I guess.
Troy, what made us look to an out-of-state firm? Not that are they going to have any kind of local presence, or were there aspects about their background that just made them that much stronger of a candidate that we would look out of state?
I don't think we were specifically looking for out of state. I think what Crow brings to the table is a lot of understanding of NTD, which is one of the things that we were looking to improve over the next 5 years. And then they also bring an extensive pension audit. They do the California pension system. So they have partners that are very aware of pension requirements. And so those 2 things, if that was the focus of what we were looking for, Crow fit the picture the best. The internal state candidates did score well. I can't say there was a big discrepancy between first and last here. It's just we had to choose one, and we chose Crow to be the top.
Okay. Any questions for Troy Bingham?
Troy, this is Beth. I had a question just to clarify, that contract should have started in August, or is the contract just moving forward? But then is the annual, like, how is that working? How did that transition working? Maybe you could explain that a little bit.
So we completed our 2019 CAFR in June of this year. So there was really nothing to be audited. Once they did the NTD report in August, that was the last thing that was completed. So they completed their full contract at August 15th. So we didn't need an auditor per se, unless something came up like an official statement or anything like that, which we did have, but it isn't necessary to have an external auditor review those documents necessarily. So we're going to start this contract as soon as possible. I think Crow is looking at the idea of preliminary audits starting here in late October. So once the board approves this contract, they'll move forward quickly to get in place. But it's all right to have a lapse from August 15th to the end of October. There was nothing that was necessarily needed in an external audit.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions for Troy Bingham? And this is the action before us is a recommendation to the board on the selection of this audit firm. There's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion to that end.
Mr. Chair, Troy Walker.
Yes, Troy. Was that a motion, Mayor Walker?
All right, a motion to approve by Troy Walker.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. And do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second.
Okay. I'll take the second from Karen.
Good.
Had a little bit of a tie there. So a motion by Mayor Walker, seconded by Karen Cronin. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Thanks, Troy, and for that effort. I would just previously, when the statement for electronic meeting determination was read, there was some question on the date. The date effectiveness was October 7th through November 6th, and signed on this September 30th statement that Jenna read. Just wanted to make sure that was part of the record. With that, we'll turn to our, and the correct form apparently is in the packet, so thank you. We'll go to our internal audit update, and with that, we'll turn to our director, Ron Ellis. Good afternoon, Ron. I think you're on mute, Ron.
Good afternoon, Chairman Christensen and members of the Board of Trustees and Audit Committee. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we're going to update on is our internal audit plan status as it was amended. As you can see, our TOD development preliminary assessment phase of that audit process is complete, and we'll discuss that in the report review. Next, the maintenance of way infrastructure audit was completed since our last meeting. We will also discuss that audit report, which is included as an attachment in the materials. So the audit phase of that project is completed. The budget management audit is in progress. It's in the reporting stage. We are really just waiting on finalization of an SOP so we can close that one out. And then we'll talk about the status of the remaining audits are in progress right now. State of good repair is in progress as well. Next slide, please. Capital projects is actually in progress. We have our kickoff meeting scheduled for October 26th, and we are currently in the process of sourcing a firm for the information technology disaster recovery review. And then our accounts payable audit is planned to begin following the capital projects audit. Next slide, please. Okay, open items review. There's not a lot of update on this one. This is the quarter that we are shifting to. First, let me say a couple of things about this. We're going to be shifting away from these manually prepared grids to using the data dashboard right out of Audit Board. So we focused our attention in the last quarter really on making sure the data between Audit Board and the manual findings all synced up. So this will probably go away in the presentation in favor of a more graphical dashboard that shows you the number of findings in progress, number of findings completed, and we can break it down by audit. It uses Microsoft Business Intelligence, which is really an exciting way to present audit findings. So, and we'll talk about Audit Board a little bit more later. And next slide, please. Okay, I do want to just mention transit-oriented development and maintenance of way will both be discussed in the audit confirmation phase or the audit reporting phase of today's presentation. Okay. Next phase, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So on the open items, budget management items will be closed pending approval of the SOP and completion of the remaining tests, as I previously mentioned. Payroll items, as I think our controller, Troy Bingham, discussed last audit committee meeting. A lot of those items will get closed out with the completion of the Kronos project, currently scheduled for completion by November 30th. That's still correct, I believe. Vanpool operations, outstanding finding is really dependent on the completion of a maintenance tracking software scheduled for completion by November 30th. And maintenance of way infrastructure contract authority finding and follow-up testing will be addressed as part of the contract audit stage. And again, we're waiting on an SOP to get final approval before we move on that, or I believe it's actually a policy that we're waiting on. Next slide, please.
Ron, could you go back to the previous slide?
Sure, previous slide. Yes, sir.
Were the numbers under the findings column supposed to add up to the total?
They are, but there's two slides. Go back one more. We got 6.5. Yeah, I think they are supposed to add up, but we're slicing and dicing some of this. I'll have to check those numbers and make sure
I
that they
think
have.
if you add up the right-hand column, the findings in progress, you've got, you got 20 there rather than 19.
Yeah, we might have moved one from in progress to closed in one of our
Okay.
issues or vice versa. So we'll make sure
Yeah, and the
that
findings addressed doesn't add up. I just was wondering if they were supposed to add up.
they are supposed to add up. And I will say with audit board, those kinds of manual presentation mistakes will certainly go away.
Okay, thank
And I
you.
apologize for that. That's really a reason I want to get away from these manually prepared tables on these slides. When we, I can with a mouse click, I can pull the data accurately. One other thing I will say about this, the way the findings are entered as individual records in audit board, we will see a difference in the numbers. So for example, we may see for maintenance of way infrastructure, we may see 6 total findings on this because they're combined in the report, but there may be 8 or 9 individual little issues when they're entered into audit board. That's where we're going through and we're trying to reconcile all that. Some of the issues we're choosing to say, this one can be closed off before the remaining portions of the issue. So we're going to, go ahead and leave that as a separate issue. So some of these numbers may change, but it's really just how the data is being sliced and how it's presented in audit board, really more of a individual record type presentation. Okay. Any more questions on these slides? Move along, please. All right. UTA ethics policy. I think I was done. Did I finish with van pool operations? I think we went through all those.
Yeah.
UTA ethics policy. Go ahead. Next slide, please. So, as you know, we reported last audit committee meeting. We were in the process of completing our live training for administrative employees. We made a few last tweaks to the learning management system. The updated class for the bargaining unit and non-management employees. In-person training is complete, with the exception of 33 employees who remain to take instructor-led training. With some of those employees, there were hires after we initiated that, so we'll probably be doing that as either separate classes for those individuals or as part of new employee orientation. Really depends on how the COVID guidance falls out as to whether or not we continue to do live meetings or we want to continue with WebEx meetings. We're following up on getting the employee acknowledgements, making sure that everybody's taking their tests and maintain proficiencies. So we're down to 33. I will be presenting a list to management this week that identifies who those 33 employees are, and we'll be getting them into a class quickly. And then we also completed the distribution and review of our financial disclosures. We have very few forms left to come in. We've gone through the majority of the forms and reviewed them with substantially no major conflicts of interest that we've identified at this point. And that's really great news because it's the 19th. The forms aren't technically due until the 31st per our ethics policy and our financial disclosure SOP. Next slide, please. Just wanted to, before we talk about audit board, I did want to talk about, the audit process a little bit. So the audit process, and you'll see a nice flow chart here that kind of lays it out very nicely shortly. Go to the next slide, please. So with audit board, that allows us the issue tracking and rollout. We've done that. We've held our training with management. We've prepared management for managing their issues within audit board and managing their responses and their action plans, really. So we can update outstanding issues as we confirm implementation of corrective action. So going back to our topic of the manual, here's the number of findings or issues that we had, here's how many have been completed. You know, those will change as we progress through the audit plan and confirm that the issues were really completed instead of just going by an inquiry, is this complete? And where we are verifying the evidence that yes, the issues are closed and it's finalized through our audit process. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a depiction of the audit process. I thought it was a good time as we make the shift into complete management with Audit Board and close out the implementation and start managing issues through Audit Board, doing our risk assessment through Audit Board, to just kind of like walk through the flow chart in the major portions of the audit. So when we talk about a PA or preliminary assessment, that's really where, you know, we're kicking off the audit, and it goes from, you know, the announcement, then we have a risk workshop, and possibly a kickoff meeting with management. Sometimes we'll combine that. Sometimes they may be separate meetings on slide 2 and 4. The IA team will discuss the particular project. We will brainstorm. We'll talk about the risk. We will look at our risk data from prior risk analysis, risk from prior reports, and where the particular process stands there. Then we will issue a document request / audit announcement, and we will go through the process of walking through a given area, looking at the particular risk and how they are working, looking at things like the SOPs and how those are working. This is usually a year-long process. And then we will agree with management on the corrective action plans that they are to implement and how long that will take. Sometimes the fixes are very quick and simple and it'll only take a couple months. Other times it requires asking for funding or resources, and it may be a longer process. And then once really we feel that the time or the deadline has elapsed for these action plans to be implemented, then we will proceed to the audit stage, and we'll do an audit announcement, do more field work, which involves the evaluation of the standard operating procedures, the process flow charts, the test, and we'll do the test of controls. What I'm getting at is when you see projects, they're all in Audit Board now as one project. So you will see a project that may have the date 1905 on it, but it's actually an audit that's being completed, or a project that's completed in 2020. So I just want to walk everybody through that process and get that on record. When you see projects that are all dated in 20, it's not that internal audit is not moving along. It's that that's when we initiated the preliminary assessment. And what makes Audit Board so nice is that I can go to a project tab and I have all the work papers there. I have the report. I have even my talking points entered. And it just puts everything in one place where I can point and click my way through reviews, answer questions, and identify issues, as well as automatically identifying where we stand on a given set of issues. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, we are initiating our annual risk analysis and audit planning. That will be presented at our next audit committee meeting. We have a risk analysis survey that I've conferred with our executive director, Carolyn, who I have many good things to say about, but unfortunately she's not here to hear them. But she's been a very good partner and been very insightful about a lot of the different processes and where some of the risk she feels lies, and that certainly is a great assistance. So we will be introducing that analysis survey being emailed essentially to management through Audit Board. They'll be able to point and click and give us their thoughts on where they feel the current risks are. As I mentioned earlier, I gave away the slide, we'll be moving to Microsoft BI as a component of Audit Board to compile the results. of the risk analysis and to really identify, and then that will drive our annual audit plan in addition to the work that was done last year and looking at that and seeing where there's updates, where does it make sense to add audits, where does it make sense to perhaps, some things might have gotten corrected and corrected quickly. Do we need to revisit an area? That'll all be driven by the risk analysis per the IIA standards. And then, of course, with Audit Board, that allows us to schedule assignments and of the planned audits. Next slide, please. That brings us to our report review. First, I'm going to discuss maintenance of way infrastructure. And then we'll discuss transit-oriented development preliminary assessment report. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Hey, Ron, before you do that, let me just confirm whether anybody has any questions on the stuff you previously presented on.
Oh, sure.
Are there any questions? Okay.
So Ron, I'm sorry, just really quick. Could you please tell me when this this audit software would be implemented again? I apologize. If you did say it, I missed it. So, but if you could just go over that again, that'd be great.
Oh, that's real easy. It's up and running, the audit software.
Great. Thank you.
We're using everything, and we can jump on a quick. I'm always excited to show people the capabilities. I mean, right now the report I'm about to talk about, I have up on my screen. So if I look away, I'm looking at my other screen. But it's pretty much implemented in every phase and aspect we plan to use it for. The last thing is just getting used to managing our issues through it. So we've got it. It's up and running. But my point of my presentation is there will be some changes in how some of the data is presented. Because we're going to pull it right out of the audit software instead of manually tracking on spreadsheets and maintaining.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ron.
Always my pleasure.
Any other questions for Ron on that? Okay, Ron, sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So here was the audit scope. These were on the maintenance of way infrastructure. This is a federally regulated process, really, the maintenance of way. So we looked at federal monitor recommendations from phase 2A interim report. We looked at the adequacy and design of the 2019 policies and procedures that were put into place as a result of our preliminary assessment. We looked at our 2017.
Ron, excuse me. Is this maintenance of way or TOD?
This is maintenance of way. And we looked at
the previous slide said TOD.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am sorry. It is transit-oriented development.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay, federal monitor. So this was transit-oriented development. I'm sorry. TOD, internal audit follow-up report. Adequacy of the policies and procedures implementing, and the operation of policies and procedures. Next slide, please. So we noted in transit-oriented development a couple of policy operating effectiveness exceptions. We noted a couple of design exceptions in the TOD policies and procedures where they did not address how the TOD project funds are to be processed. And we noted an update to the contracting authority policy with proper description of the role of the Attorney General's office. So really that was just an update to the one schedule and the SOPs. That's been made. When that policy gets to final approval with the board, that will be considered set to rest. Next slide, please. Okay, now maintenance away, but before I...
Hey, Ron, can I go back to the TOD?
Sure.
Tell me, just because it was a pretty sensitive area for us as an agency, are these exceptions that were found, are they are in the rank of severity? Are there any severe items?
Nothing severe along the lines of approaching, misconduct or anything like that. So what the actual exceptions were is we noted in 3 projects that we reviewed, and these are still ongoing projects to my understanding, is that they were missing the role map and the approval matrix in 3 of the projects. So those are considered, those are really considered like operating effectiveness exceptions. They're documentation that really should be in the project file. Now, that being said, we also noted that, Paul Drake and his team did an excellent job of implementing a Microsoft Teams-based dashboard where they can track the project. So really, they can potentially look at their documentation checklist and see if they even need these, given the fact that they've gone to a more electronic process as well. So to answer your question directly, I don't think they are, they're nothing that in the private world would be considered a material weakness or a significant deficiency, but it is very important to set out levels of authority and also have a roadmap somewhere and somehow, whether it's through Microsoft Teams or whether it's through a manual roadmap that's put into the project documents.
Would it be okay if I ask Paul a question? I see that he's on the call.
Absolutely. That's why he's here.
Paul,
Yep.
Are you able to join us?
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, thank you. Tell me, from this audit, I mean, obviously a lot of processes have been sort of refined and improved and tightened up. Are sort of these exceptions, do you feel like, corrective actions are taking place in a way that sort of going forward that you feel like you have in your processes any missing aspects of this, or?
Well, I'm encouraged by the results of the audit actually, and yeah, I think it shows that we're headed in the right direction. I think these, like Ron was saying, are little tweaks that can help improve our process. But I think the policy as it's set up and as the board has approved really contains the controls that I think that we need to be transparent and to be objective in our decisions. So the 3 projects that Ron mentioned are the 3 that the board selected back in the day, and those are the ones that we really want to test that new policy with. So we'll get into it and make sure that the controls work the way that they should. But I have every expectation that they will.
Okay. Any questions from anybody on the committee? Okay. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Ron.
Okay. Now we can move on to maintenance of way infrastructure as soon as the slides catch up. Go ahead to the next slide. This was, okay, you can see on your screens there, governance. Our audit scope was governance, maintenance, training requirements. It's a big portion of the maintenance of way area. Inspection, that's like a huge part of it. And then the third-party contracts and that aspect of it. So that was our audit scope. We did not include maintenance of way systems. That is a third aspect of, that's another audit entirely that gets completed in this area. And we did not include an assessment of maintenance of way performance. Next slide, please. Oh, our audit periods, our PA period was May 1, 2018 through April 30, 2019. Our final audit stage of the process was June 1, 2019 through July 31, 2020. Okay, next slide, please. There were 2 issues from the preliminary assessment that remained in progress, and all the other issues really connected with maintenance of way were corrected. If you can, next slide, please. The Maintenance of Way Department has implemented former governance controls such as delegation of authority and assignment of roles and responsibilities consistent with their new organizational structure. The new training program was approved by the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, and updates to the supply chain SOP were placed on hold due to the implementation of Laserfish. So that's one of those issues that's really just kind of hanging out there, that once we go through supply chain and verify that that implementation is complete with respect to maintenance away, that will get closed out. Next slide, please. They've identified a permanent software solution to track inspections, work orders, and resolutions. And the department has implemented an interim solution until the permanent system is modified. So this shows us like an outstanding issue in our world until the permanent software solution is deployed and tested. But in the meantime, I have to commend Dave Hancock and his crew for implementing an interim solution to mitigate the risk. Even if they left it at the interim solution, which is the way they're tracking their maintenance and tying it together now, it would be fine. But they have a better way of doing that, and they're pursuing it. Any questions before I proceed?
Yeah, I guess I do have a little bit of question, Dave. I know in your sort of tentative budget presentation for 21, there were some, suggestions and some improvements that may present themselves in the final tentative budget. But do you feel like you have what you need to ultimately respond to the issues identified in this audit and the needs within your organization?
Yes, yeah, Carlton, thank you for that question. Yeah, we do. This is really this software solution is coming from IT, and it's really to develop some inspection reporting for not only MOW but facilities and the TVM group, and also to do inspections for our bridges. And so we're looking forward to this software being completed. It's scheduled to be complete at the end of January. We are looking at some testing, but yes, on your question, I feel like we've gotten great support, and with the few budget amendments that we've done and the software that IT is helping us with, we should be ready to go on as far as inspections and being compliant with the FRA, everything that we need.
And is that software solution a new product, or is it just the use of our existing system?
It was an existing vendor that IT was working with that was doing some forms. That they were creating forms for IT, and so the company was called Wendia, and IT would know more about that. But I've seen the mock-ups and the development, and everything's going well. So I think it's going to be a solution that across the board is going to be very, very good for MOW and facilities and TVM group.
Thank you. Any questions for Dave from the committee?
Dave, I did have a question. This is Beth. I just was curious how, when do you think that the permanent system will get in place and how that will fully integrate? I mean, I'm assuming all of your people are already kind of trying to make it all work. I'm just curious what that timeline is.
Yeah, the timeline, the last timeline I heard from IT, which was about a week ago, is the end of January. We should be fully implemented by the end of January. Now, I believe there's going to be a training period. It'll probably be a month or two for MOW to get used to the tablets that they are now going to be using to do the inspections. But at the end of the day, everything's going to be digital, and it's going to be electronic. And so we'll be able to see that on a month-to-month basis, how well we're doing with the KPIs and it'll be a huge boost for MOW.
Thank you. I did have one other kind of comedy question. Just, I know that sometimes when we have snow days, some of our sensors can get a little wonky. Is this going to be helpful with that as well in any way, or is there another thing that's going into play?
No, there's another thing that's going into play for snow days, which was some of the funding that we received with switch heaters, new switch heaters and new switch heater covers that have all been installed. We are making some final modifications and testing them out, but that should help with the snow issues that we had in Front Ranger last winter.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Dave. Ron?
I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Yes. One other thing we wanted to talk about is just following what Maintenance Away is, what an excellent job they did with their process flow charts and, to govern the use of the railroad worker in charge. And also, the way they've integrated, as I've mentioned before, the, interim solutions before permanent systems are modified. And they've just, it was one of the best audits that we've had the pleasure of doing, because Dave and his crew were, not only solve problems for the short term, but develop long-term solutions. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Ron. Any other questions from the committee?
I don't have a question, just a comment, but Ron, I want to just thank you and all of your team. This has been one of the most exciting audit committees I've attended in a while, and your enthusiasm has rolled through. So thank you. That was well done.
Well, thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you, Ron. Just would note of that while we had a previous audit committee scheduled in December, that has been canceled. We didn't see a need at this point to meet in December. That could always change if needed, but at this point, we would look to February. We don't have the 2021 meeting schedule yet, but it would be similar to 2020, but we will certainly get that out to the committee before adoption. So with that, unless there's any other items, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion from Karen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion from Karen, seconded by Beth for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes, and we'll stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good report, Ron.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the hard work. It's looking good.